everybody. I'm Noreen Dunnels. I am not Pat Walsh. Just wanted to let you know. Pat informed us this morning that it is Bushnell University's check-in, I forget what to call it, the move-in day today, and he was not able to be with us. So I will get the meeting started. First of all, I just want to acknowledge Pat and his leadership and commitment to this work over the last years. It's been pretty significant, a fair amount of time and energy and commitment to this work. And he has let us know that he wants to continue to support the work in whatever way he can. So I know he's not here, but I wanted to acknowledge him, and because I think it's important for us to do so. There are a few of us that have to leave real close to 1 for another meeting, so I want to just be mindful of that. We do have a fairly robust meeting agenda today, and so welcome. And I would ask you to, the first thing we have on the agenda is review, and then I would entertain a motion for approval for the consent agenda. And that's the minutes from June 18th meeting, as well as the revenue and expenditures through last month. I'll give you a minute to sort of peek at that. And when you're ready, if somebody would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thanks. Was that Rick?
Yeah.
Great. How about a second?
I second that.
Sorry, I can't see. Was that Sean?
Yes.
So Sean Murphy, second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Just come up.
Aye.
Whatever works. Thank you. Any dissenting? Okay, the consent agenda passes. So since Pat and I didn't have a chance to touch base on the election of officers, I will. One of the things I'm really excited to announce when we had this election process in the last month or two is that Chris McAllister has been elected to chair of the Poverty and Homelessness Board, and I'm just so thrilled with that. As you all know, he brings such incredible depth of experience and knowledge of the community, and I'm really thrilled. He is one of the, he is going to step into the chair role. I have agreed to continue as chair-elect or whatever. I'm sorry, Steve, I never can get these quite right, but vice chair-elect of the board. And I know we have some new members, and I'm sorry that I don't have something in front of me that can identify all of our new members. So I think I'm just going to ask Steve if you could sort of step in and make sure we don't miss any of the new members who've been voted. Yeah, thank you.
First of all, we'll need to have a vote. The executive committee reviewed the slate of officers and the voting by the membership, which was done electronically. And so Noreen, you'll need to entertain a motion on the slate of officers for the new year. And,
okay.
And in terms of new members today, I know that Brittany is here from the Chamber of Commerce. She's waving. And I think Julie Weissman also is now a board member as well.
Okay, so Steve, for officers, and I'm sorry that I don't know this, but beyond chair and chair-elect or vice chair, do we have other officers in that queue?
No, we don't. We just have a chair and a vice chair position to vote on.
Okay, great. That makes it a little bit easier. So then I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the officers. Again, Chris McAllister for board chair, and then I will, if elected, serve as chair-elect of the PHB. I'd look for a motion to approve.
This was quite
I motion to
proof that we accept that slate as indicated.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Well, Harold.
Cliff.
Oh, thank you, Sheriff. Okay. We have a motion on the floor. How about a second?
I'll second. It's Sean again.
Thanks, Sean. Put you on the hot seat there. Any questions or comments? How about all those who approve signify by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Congratulations,
you.
Chris. Yay.
Thank
you so
you.
much. New members, and Chris, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your vote of confidence as we move forward as a slate of officers to try and help bring the PHB's goals forward. I also would like to just, in a quick moment, give my thoughts on Mr. Pat Walsh, who has been a mentor and a voice of both understanding and of solutions as we've navigated through our strategic plan and helped implement the initial parts of the TAC report. So I just want to say that we certainly will miss having him at every meeting, but he has said that he'd like to be involved as we move forward in engaging both the business sector and the greater community. So thank you all for that. And with that in mind, Amanda, would you please be willing to tell us about the Continuum of Care?
Thanks, Chris. This is just a quick update. Oh, is there feedback? Sorry, I'm just going to mute other folks. Okay. So the Continuum of Care process, I just have a quick brief update. Recently, HUD has posted all of the grant inventory worksheets, so the GIW, also known as. And that's really just a technical process, part of the Continuum of Care competition period. And essentially that just outlines all of our renewals that are going to be eligible to renew in the upcoming competition when and if that happens. So we have submitted that already to our local HUD field office on behalf of the Continuum of Care, and they've reviewed that. And so they take some time to review and then post a final version of that in several weeks. The other thing to note about that is that I don't know if I had updated this group of the status of our Connections Transitional Housing Project. We worked directly with our local HUD field office and with St. Vincent de Paul to transition that grant to a rapid rehousing model instead of a transitional housing model. We were able to do that through amendment in order to satisfy some compliance issues, and then really just as it was already sort of operating in that model. And so we were able to complete that process in July, and so that's retroactive back to June. So that project is now officially a rapid rehousing project under the Continuum of Care. So that was noted on the GIW as well, and then I couldn't remember if I brought that to this group. So as far as the Continuum of Care competition process, we don't have any news, and I don't know if no news is good news. Due to COVID, we've had some delays through HUD, and so they haven't released the notice of funding availability for the upcoming year. And there was a little note within the GIW release that kind of noted that they're still reviewing that and essentially what they're going to do for this upcoming competition. And they've indicated that it's possible they might do some kind of reduced process, some kind of automatic renewal. So I think they're exploring options still, and we have not been given any indication of what that competition will look like for this year. So I'll keep you posted on anything I hear, but that's really all the information that we have so far. Are there questions about any of the COC stuff until I go into the next topic on the agenda?
I do not currently see anybody raising hands, Amanda. I do have a quick question, if I may. Do we have any timeline of when we should expect to hear, or is it just so up in the air that we have no way to even have an expectation?
We don't have any timeline expectation right now. It should have already been released, so we're far behind the normal schedule, and we have not been given any indication of when something might be released.
Thank you very much. With that in mind, if we don't have any other questions for Amanda on this, can we please go into the ESG?
Sure. So I presented previously on some options for our Emergency Solutions Grant, the CV1 allocation. That's around an amount of $990,000. So you might remember that I previously presented a couple of options that we could do for that allocation. Part of that is street outreach in the rural areas, which we've set aside $150,000 for. The remainder of it essentially goes into emergency shelter. And so really just the update at this point is that we're still kind of reviewing what options we have under that model to do through our ESG CV1 allocation. Right now, the thought is that we are definitely going to be prioritizing those at highest risk for COVID-19 complications, which would mean the elderly, those with disabilities, as much to our knowledge that we have that information. The models that we're really focusing on for that first allocation, and I've been working closely with Sarai Johnson to kind of formulate what our thoughts are around this, but the main option that we're looking at is programming for hotel options, hotel motel, and that could potentially be clusters of hotel rooms, whatever we're able to secure, as well as options for securing an entire motel facility and programming around that. And the thought is that we really want to make sure it's not just hotel motel vouchers, but we're really looking at models that have provided a lot of support services to those units, and as well as provided additional housing support so that folks can move on from those hotel units to permanent housing as much as possible to really make sure that we're getting the most out of that funding and that resource. So right now we're at the point where we're just sort of developing the program models around that, determining what the procurement process needs to be for any of the things we want to move forward with. And we're doing that sort of internally at Lane County, and then we'll probably bring back some sort of final decisions around that shortly. The other thing to update on is we do have a second allocation of ESG. It's ESG CV2. We have a meeting scheduled with the state, which OHCS next week. And during that, we hope to get some more information around what that allocation could look like. Right now, we anticipate we will likely receive at least $1 million. The state has about 49 million, but they have indicated that a portion of that potentially will be competitive, and we may need to submit a proposal or multiple proposals for securing additional funding beyond that initial allocation. So that has yet to be determined. I don't think they've finalized that yet. So we hope to get more information when we meet with them next week and determine what we might be able to receive from that second ESG CV2 allocation. And I think that's all my updates.
Thank you for that, Amanda. Are there any questions for Amanda regarding the ESG or how it has been or can be applied based off what we do now? Sounds like it's going to be a quiet meeting today.
Chris, this is Steve Manella. I
Yes, sir.
just want to mention a few things about the Emergency Solutions Grant.
Yes, sir.
And I think that previously Amanda shared with you a recommendation for the CV1. We are assembling a planning document, and I don't know if that's been shared with this group yet, but it encompasses the CV2 funding, because this funding through the CARES Act is available over the next 2 years to us. And, you know, as Amanda alluded to, what happened during the legislative process is rather than giving us a formula allocation of $6 to $7 million that we would have normally received, the OHCS asked in the budget bill to be able to work with local continuums of care and come up with a process to determine how they would allocate the money other than using the formula that they've historically used. So, you know, there are a wide range of uses for that funding: shelter, outreach, rapid rehousing, homeless prevention, case management services, outreach services, you know, a number of different strategies that we can put in place. And Sarai Johnson will touch on that a bit, as what we're doing is we're trying to layer this with CRF money that the state and the county have received, FEMA funding, and then other resources that the county and the city of Eugene have towards this end. So I think by the time we meet next month, we'll be able to share with you a plan, and it will make greater sense to you. But it is complicated because we, in order to maximize all the resources that are available, we have to go through some steps and look at how each of these funding sources can work towards different pieces of the puzzle.
Yes, sir. Steve, Noreen asked for the new members. Can you please tell us what CB1 stands for?
Oh, can I also say just any of our acronyms, because it took me 2 or 3 years to understand all of the different funding and opportunities like that. It just will help, I think, in creating a better understanding of what it is.
Yeah, so this is what CV stands for is it's the COVID funding through the CARES Act. So we get on an annual basis emergency solutions grant funding, and this is supplemental funding through the CARES Act. And so there were 2 allocations, and they are labeled COVID-19 1 and COVID-19 2, CV1 and CV2.
Thank you for that. I do have a question in regards to the process. Is there any way this body or community members can reach out to the state or our representatives and help with this process? Or is this something that it's just time and meetings?
I can share with you, we have a consultation this week or next week, as Amanda mentioned. And I think after we get some more information, we can best give you a recommendation about, how, this group can be involved in the process. And I'm expecting if they do have an application process that they'll want to see how we involve the community and how we involve the Continuum of Care Board in making decisions about what we put into the application. So, the other part of this has just been a political process. These dollars typically are only available to communities outside of the Tri-County area. And so we do have some concern that the state, continue to look at allocating it out because based upon need, HUD gave the money for the balance of state. And so that's one thing that we're watching. And again, Chris, as part of the leadership of this board, we'll let you know if there's an opportunity, to have input in that process. We have involved our intergovernmental relations manager and the chair of the county board is monitoring this. She currently has weekly meetings with the governor's office, so this is on her radar as well.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. Is Sarai Johnson with us? I see an SJ, but we have
The
on.
answer is it took me forever to unmute, sorry. Yes,
worries.
so are we shelter stakeholder update at this point? Is that where?
I'll be able to tell you after we have the compliance manager screen move. Thank you.
Awesome.
We are now on regional implementation planning with Sarai Johnson.
Aha, that even more fun. Cool. So right now, as Steve and Amanda both mentioned, we're in the throes of working out how the inclement weather strategies can be deployed. And in the original presentation that I made to the Board of County Commissioners on July 21st, we were suggesting 4 different strategies, one of which was quick build or modular solutions, different structures that could be currently put into play for emergency shelter, but then longer term would be able to be redeployed as permanent supportive housing and possibly into multi-story structures. Because those interventions are more expensive, and in light of the fact that our allocations have been shifting a bit, as Steve and Amanda both kind of mentioned, we don't have as much certainty around funding as we had hoped we would. So at this point, we're really focusing on 3 of the solutions, one of them being safe sleeping villages, such as microsites and rest stops, or things like, other versions of Opportunity Village style locations, along with motels and hotels for people who are highly medically vulnerable or at risk of complications from COVID-19. And then finally using congregate shelter in small clusters as needed. And that can look a few different ways, but that would most likely also be indoors and would be more targeted for people who are not at high risk of complications or severe illness or death from COVID-19. So those are the 3 things that we're working on. The last week, we've been really trying to nail down at least an initial budget based on resources that we do have in hand and or are probable. So we have a few different budget scenarios that are helping us to shift our focus into the places where we hope we can make the most impact the most quickly. So we do plan to apply to use some FEMA funds for non-congregate shelter, as well as these other strategies, well, that being congregate shelter as needed. And our hope is that we'll be able to identify enough funding to support, according to one of our scenarios, around 1,000, maybe a little bit more than that, beds, which would help us, one, make up lost ground for the beds that we've lost due to COVID-19, about 250 that continue to be offline in our shelter system, and 2, also to help us to replace some level of service that was filled by Egan warming centers. So along with shelter, another big part of the puzzle that we do need to continue to work on is how can we ensure that people have access to safe, warm spaces on very cold nights, as the traditional Egan Warming Center model is very difficult to manage, with the volunteer force being over 60 typically, or the majority of the volunteer force, churches being a major destination, which are not necessarily able to participate at this time, and the congregate nature of the warming center, which of course makes it rather difficult. So we're exploring some different options on that front to see what it is that we can do to help make sure that people truly have the bare necessity, life-sustaining resources that they need over the coming winter months, while we're also faced with an unprecedented pandemic that we don't really know what's going to happen. So we really want to try to keep our unhoused and unsheltered community as safe as possible, also recognizing that a large number of them do have some of the severe underlying conditions that put them at great risk of severe illness or even death from COVID-19, according to CDC guidelines. So that's where we're at, moving this along as quickly as possible. And I'm also working with County and City of Eugene leadership to identify the best and most expeditious way for us to get this work on the ground as we go. So right now that work is living at the TAC implementation team level primarily. We may need some greater coordination and support such that may be offered through the Emergency Operations Center or something like that. So we're looking into a number of different ways to make this all happen, and I welcome questions and thoughts if you have them.
I have one more comment before the questions. If I can just put one more piece into this. We are planning, scheduling a meeting with people who are nonprofit organizations, service providers, people who have ideas about strategies. And I think, Sarai, that's going to be scheduled for the first week in September, prior to the shelter stakeholder meeting.
That's right. Yes, we'd like to have that meeting in the very near future so we can take the results of the meeting to the next Shelter Stakeholder Committee meeting, which will be on September 3rd.
Thank you, Steve and
So-
Sarai. John Radich is in queue. Then I see my, zooming at Noreen, and then I will be third in queue. Is there anybody else? Please signal with that raised hand. Okay, so John, feel free. I believe you're muted still, John.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my question is around auxiliary services in the county. Because of COVID-19, there's less access points for homeless people during the day. And I know a lot of them, have to go different places to access other services, or they have to do it online. And I think they're missing a lot of connections because some places aren't open and they don't have places to go to access internet services and computers to get potential services for themselves. So I was wondering if there's any work being done on that. So it's an auxiliary service, but it does help those who are homeless.
Thank you, John. Noreen?
Well, I didn't know if maybe Steve or Amanda could respond to John's question.
Amanda, could you,
Sorry, I couldn't hear very well. I don't know if I have an answer to that question.
what I will say is that, most of our service providers have many of the service providers have reopened some hours at the community service centers. The other thing that has happened among local government and we're in the process of putting more of that in place is increased outreach services. And then we're intending on providing some things available through the Eugene Public Library when they open again at the end of this month, beginning of September. So that will provide another resource for people. And in particular, we've been working with Lane Workforce Partnership, and we're going to move some of our employment specialists over to the library to provide services out of the library.
Thank you, Steve. I also want to put out that Springfield Library does have some options for computer use opening up, and I was told to refer to their website. So did you get the answer you were seeking, John? I'm not hearing no. So
Yes, that's very helpful. I appreciate the information.
excellent. Thank you, sir. Noreen, you're on.
Yeah, I just had a comment. I wanted to make sure this group knew that I had a conversation with Megan Schultz last week with 15th Night, and the 15th Night and actually are going to do a youth TAC report. They're going to build on the youth assessment that was done by this body last year. And so I think that's important probably for Sarai to know, for everyone to know, that there will be a sort of a youth TAC report so that we can look at what the best strategies are for our unhoused youth, not only in an emergency situation, but sort of thinking about all of the full spectrum, short-term emergency, long-term kind of support. So just wanted to share that.
Excellent, Noreen. We'll jump to Cheryl.
Yeah, I think I have my microphone functioning. I just wanted to provide an update to the group because I know that being open for day use or availability of resources is pretty important right now. And where we are is we actually are serving double the amount of meals that we were serving prior to COVID-19. It's just we are serving that through our community partnerships that we're having with a number of folks. And we have a whole long list of folks, including Hosea and I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank, but it's double the number of meals. And our mobile service, our mobile outreach has been working with the library folks and providing essentials there. But like Chris and I have spoken on other occasions, there continues to be a huge problem with respect to showers and other resources that folks were previously accessing. But I want to make sure that we keep that on the radar, that it's not just the housing issue, the overnight. And I also wanted to let everyone know that we're tracking, we are now 1 month into our low barrier shelter, and there has not been one night that we've turned away anyone. So at least while the weather is the way it is, or maybe the way high concerns regarding congregate living, folks are at least not seeking shelter with us to fill up even a pretty small number of low barrier shelter beds. So just to throw that out there.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, for that. If there's any way that people can help coordinate, I'm sure they can reach out and learn more about what y'all are doing, since you have higher numbers than you expected. Is there any other questions before I ask mine to Sarai and Steve? Seeing none, Sarai or Steve, I was curious how you mentioned providers giving input. Has there been or will there be any efforts to reach out to lived experience or those who are not currently in the current shelter models while we're working on some of this regional implementation, given that a lot of those folks are who would be utilizing the EGAN or other winter strategies?
Yes, we really need to do that, and so would welcome League and your advising on that particular piece of this too.
Excellent. And are we reaching out to all providers in our community or ones that are just in particular with the Continuum of Care? And are there any ways that we can help reach out or support bringing more people into the conversation if need be?
My intention is to include all of the service providers who assist with people who are unhoused and unsheltered. So that also may even include issues around food and other issues too, sort of like Cheryl was mentioning, hygiene, etc. So yes, this should be a community-wide lift. I don't think that we can do it with any one single group or even a small handful of groups, such as those who participate in Continuum of Care.
Yes, ma'am. And my final question, if I may, is how are we reaching out and how are we considering rural communities outside of Springfield, Eugene in regards to this planning as well?
I have just a few contacts in Florence and Cottage Grove, and I'm looking for more connections in Oak Ridge. So I would be very interested in meeting with service providers who serve those areas. If any are on this call, or if any of y'all know of people who I should be connecting with in those communities, please feel free to shoot me an email, and I could use any help that you can get. I personally think that including rural communities in this is extremely important. For sure, that is one of the big focuses, as Amanda mentioned, with our ESG funds for outreach, and so that will be the same with other resources that are needed throughout the county.
Thank you, Sarai. Are there any other questions regarding this regional implementation plan? If anyone has not seen it or would like to see it, I believe that it went out on a couple county emails, but I'm sure that we can get it to you if you'd like. It incorporates a lot of stuff we've been doing and improving upon over the past couple of years, and so I'm really excited to see it roll out. And so, not seeing any hands. Just a quick reminder before we go into committee reports that if you would like to do public comment, to please mention so in the chat, which is to the right of your window. That said, I would like to invite David Heverland to tell us about employment.
Thank you and congratulations, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David.
Employment Work Group met on 8/6/2020 at 1 o'clock in a virtual meeting where all the members present provided an operational status update to their agencies and organizations. We discussed a gap analysis that was done in 2017, an actual living document of agencies and organizations providing employment assistance within the catchment area. And we all agreed that this document needs some work, pre, post, and during COVID, if you will, that we'd reach out to those surveyed and make additions to that document as necessary to get it updated for 2020 and 21. The focus is still primarily on supported employment, apprenticeship opportunities, anything at entry level and beyond for our impoverished and homeless constituents. We look forward to scheduling presentations from the Maple Project and apprenticeship opportunities and an overview of the Discard Upcycle Program organization here in Eugene. I look forward to the employment specialists. I piggyback now what Steve mentioned as far as employment specialists being in the library. I wanted to catch that quick. And we'd like to welcome the Executive Director of Oregon Rain, Carolyn Cummings' participation and willingness to be on the work group itself. Thank you.
Excellent, sir. Thank you for that report. Dr. Kincaid, would you like to share with us on healthcare?
Great. Thank you, Chris, and congratulations. Nice to have a fellow healthcare work group member chairing this august body. So thank you for taking that on. I do want to let the PHB know that the healthcare group has been meeting consistently. We had our last meeting at the end of July. We have subgroups that meet. I think I explained that in an earlier meeting, looking at areas around respite care, discharge, hospital, and care coordination, as well as looking at direct services in our sheltered environment. So those groups have continued to meet and continue to have good progress with community collaborative efforts. We spent most of our meeting talking about the emergency solution grant opportunities and looking for ways that we could potentially apply for some of those funds to help address some of the issues that our healthcare group had been working on. And so reviewed a series of potential proposals for that process. We have several efforts that are going on within the community that remain pretty exciting. We have data systems now that are communicating from allowing information with housing and to be connected with some of the healthcare information. So that's assisted our discharge planners. And we continue to work with the care coordination services, particularly with Dovetail and others, to meet the needs of some of the high need individuals within that are unhoused. So the work continues. We hope this fall, it's hard again to do a lot of this virtually, but we hope to have some more substantial recommendations for this group later in the year. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Kincaid. I am currently the chair of the LEAGUE, which is the Lived Experience Advisory Group for Unhoused Engagement, which is made up of 100% homeless, former homeless individuals, and helps advise the PHP from a lived experience lens. With that in mind, we are working on 3 presentations. One is the State of the Homelessness letter that we do every year, and it is a perspective based on things that we as a group find are important or should be considered or to highlight. So that is one of the items that we're currently working on. We are also doing a analysis through the lived experience lens of the COVID response in the first wave, and making some recommendations should this happen again. And third, there is a presentation being prepared in regards to engaging law enforcement and homelessness, especially in times of COVID and unrest. And so our committee is made up of approximately 10 folks, and we just added a new gentleman, a single father, to represent our body. And we also have in the same seat a veteran to be able to share that lived experience. And so we are excited to continue to partner with the Homes for Good project, MLK Commons, where our group was able to help with some of the structure design, as well as some of the aesthetics and program considerations recommended. So with that in mind, I yield on leave and ask Sarai Johnson to speak for shelter stakeholders.
We met toward the end of July with the Shelter Stakeholder Committee and spoke a great deal about two main topics. And Cheryl also presented a wonderful overview of the mission's shifting model into their experimentation with the low barrier shelter. She has mentioned even on this call today. And so we got a lot of information about how the mission is adapting to COVID-19 and seeing the need of the community and responding to it in creative and new ways, which is wonderful to see. So thank you for that, Cheryl. We also talked a bit about updates to the TAC numbers. So as you most likely know, the TAC report or the Lane County Public Shelter Feasibility Study recommended several different interventions, 10 total, to help us to bring our adult homelessness to what's called functional zero, meaning that there are enough shelter beds and houses for people who want them in our system. So we, at this time, have been working from those numbers since 2018, which indicated that we needed 175 bed low barrier shelter, which we also are calling a navigation center. And it also calls for 350 units of permanent supportive housing. What we have done is recognize that some of the limitations of the point in time count, which is what TAC was using for their numbers, require us to really take a deeper look at how many people and who is truly experiencing homelessness in our communities. So we've been with our HMIS administrator and the team that works on HMIS, cultivating a homeless by name list for the last couple of years. I believe this committee is aware of that. And based on those numbers, we find around 4,000-ish people are accessing homelessness services, especially during the winter. That number goes down a bit in the summer months. But that ultimately every month, about 80% of the people who are unhoused in our community are considered unsheltered, meaning they sleep in places not meant for human habitation, and that the numbers are much, much higher than any point in time count has ever indicated, with about 9,000, well, not about, exactly 9,679 unduplicated adults accessing homelessness services in 2019. So we recast those numbers, those recommended interventions based on the monthly homeless by name list numbers, around 4,000 to 4,500 is typical, and found that we needed to add about 475 shelter beds, along with additional alternative emergency shelter, such as Conestoga huts and rest stops and things like that, to be able to approach the same level of functional zero that the TAC recommendations were aiming for. So we have a lot more on the plate for that. And also after this shelter stakeholder meeting, I presented that information to a joint elected meeting of the Board of County Commissioners and Eugene City Council, so that they all know and understand the scope of what we are really looking at. And largely, they were supportive of the new recommendations, and we're hard at work right now on weather strategies, which brings me to the next thing we talked about. I already gave you a bit of an update earlier, but we did discuss more in detail the inclement weather strategy recommendations in that stakeholder meeting as well. So those are kind of the main topics that we covered. Obviously, our huge long-term work is still underway, with permanent supportive housing continuing to be built, and then additional shelter that we're trying to stand up for at least 12 to 18 months to cope with COVID-19 and this coming winter. And all of those things we are strategically planning to make sure that a long-term impact is realized in our homelessness system, whether that's helping more people get housed and or connected to services, and also hopefully helping to expand the capacity of our homelessness service providers and of our sheltering system overall, as we're working on this. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sarai. Is Miss Susan Lopez available to tell us about youth homeless solutions? I am not seeing her here. Is there, Amanda, is there staff who could speak to their points?
I am not able to do that. I have not been at that group. I don't know if there's anyone else who is a member of that group who could speak to whether that group has met or if there's any updates.
Okay, we have Deborah. Thank you, Amanda.
The last meeting was on August 3rd, and I'm sorry that I didn't attend. There was a message that an email that looked as if it had been canceled. So I'm not sure how many members did make it to that team meeting. So I haven't had any updates for 2 months now, and I think I just, in general, a couple of the updates that I do have around youth is that one of them is, of course, the focus on returning to school and re-engaging students, and where are the students and how are we going to meet their needs, especially around tutoring and, you know, one-on-one support if they have disabilities or need you know, and so all that is being discussed in many places. Currently, I have been working at the youth house, St. Vincent de Paul Youth House, and I know that that is a topic for the staff and also for the girls that live there. The youth house, while we were sheltered in place, had a total of 7 or 8 girls. There was 4 that graduated, and so the numbers were pretty low, but now we have a full house again. And that seems to be going pretty well, and everybody's pretty set on where they're headed, LCC or, you know, ECHO in a GED program, whatever they're going to do. But the, you know, just like so many students, the issue is how are we going to meet their needs without meeting one-on-one, you know, in person. So that's a big challenge. We're talking about having, you know, just 2 desks with a plexiglass in the middle and trying to do some tutoring that way. We've rearranged all the furniture at the youth house so that there's lots of space. We've removed some of the computers. We've got better internet so that they can work in their rooms. So we're addressing that. But I know that it's just, it's a big concern on how we're going to find the youth and re-engage them after sheltering in place and them just, you know, not attending or participating at that time without a lot of support.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for that, Deborah. We will try and check in with Susan as well to see what the committee work has been doing, given there's a little bit of confusion on that. Yes, sir.
I would also mention that our staff person, Alex Dreer, who staffs that committee, is out on maternity leave. And so that may be why we have a gap here in knowing what happened at the last meeting.
Thank you for that clarification, Steve. We have a couple people leaving over the next 10 minutes. And so I have asked if there's going to be anybody to speak in public comment. I would like to, if this group would entertain, if there is someone who would like to speak for public comment, that we allow that to happen before anybody wanted to ask questions in regards to the committees. Is there anybody who would oppose that format? Okay, I'm seeing head shakes. Is there anybody from the members of the public who would like to speak before some of our body leaves for their other meetings? Please so by putting your name in the record on the chat. I'll give a minute or so to do so. I would like to also thank everybody who participates in our committee work. A lot of the board's efforts are done through the task groups and the committee works. All members are able to join the committees. So please, new members, ask questions and bring your skill sets if you're interested. I'm not seeing anybody from the public wanting to make public comment.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone, Chris.
Okay, so with that in mind, are there any questions regarding any of the committee reports that we heard? Anybody would like follow-up information or considerations?
I have a question based upon Deborah's comments on the Youth Homeless Solutions Work Group.
Yes, sir.
And also John Radich's earlier comments. You know, as we're planning how we use the Emergency Solutions Grant, you know, it would be helpful, you know, particularly with the youth homelessness, you know, if there are outreach or other kinds of strategies that in this environment with folks maybe not attending school that we should think of investing in, it would be very helpful for folks to let Amanda Borta know, you know, about that if there's some specific youth strategies that we should do. And then, you know, I think with John's comment again, and I think also Cheryl's comment about the hygiene services, those are the kinds of things that we need to incorporate into our plan for using the federal funds that we'll be receiving. And, you know, I know that I've networked a little bit with Noreen, and I got some additional information out of Salem around showers. And so I think the hygiene piece is still, you know, very important to make sure that we have something in place on that. But, you know, again, we have a lot of, even though there are some rules and restrictions around some of the funding we have, we do have an ability to put in a good proposal to get enough assistance to address some of these issues. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Steve. I would like to also reflect on some of Cheryl's comments regarding the mission and the low barrier shelter. I am very excited that that opportunity exists. And I was curious if providers or community members wanted to know more about what the program consists of and what the pathway from emergency shelter to some of the other programming is. I was wondering if that's available for them to learn more. Yeah, Cheryl, sorry.
I don't know if anyone has any questions. We're starting to put more of that information out online. And of course, I'm happy if anyone just wants to give me a call to chat about it or to present at some point. Just let me know, Chair. And again, I forgot to mention congratulations to you as well.
Thank you very much for that. I would like to piggyback on some of Cheryl's comments also earlier about the hygiene. There is a grant that was offered to carry it forward, which I am the one of the directors for. But we have staffing for a bus, a 6-unit bus, but there's no place for it to go. And so there are hygiene options in our community, but we're having trouble, just like with having shelter for people to go. We're having issues with where to put places for services for people, whether they're during the day or in the evening. And so as the community looking for this, if we can maybe help Sarai and staff know of any options or availabilities for projects or possible sites, that would probably help some of the things happen in this these lulls, so to speak. So that said, Steve, is there anything regarding the committee work or the next steps that you think that this body should focus on before we have our next meeting?
No, I think the next meeting will be bringing back, you know, more refined plans, both from the pieces that Sarai is working on, and then how funding sources such as the Emergency Solution Grant fits in. I also wanted to mention, we weren't able to give it to him today, but we had the Board of Commissioners, I'm holding it up, all signed a certificate of appreciation to Pat Walsh for his service. And we'll be mailing that to him.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Steve. We are about half hour ahead of schedule. I wanted to really make sure that we had time for public comment if someone had wanted to contribute. I was wondering if I wanted to also reach out and offer to members of the board if there's something that you would like to see on some of the next agendas, please reach out and we will see how we can fit that in. We have a very, very big lift as a community over the next couple of years. And so we have lots of conversations and inputs and perspectives to consider. So I just encourage people to reach out and talk to us. Let us know what you want to hear, what you need to see, and how we can help involve more people in this process. Amanda, is there anything that you would like to have for the good of the order?
Nope, I don't think so. I think that wraps us up.
Excellent. So thank you everybody for attending the August Poverty and Homelessness Board all members meeting. Feel free to reach out to myself, Noreen, or staff, and we will be happy to chat with you. Have a great rest of your day and stay cool.